Hi everybody. Welcome. So today we're going to talk about vulnerability, right? Nobody wants to talk about that. We're going to talk about vulnerability and how it is attached to you. So something during this week God brought to me about my vulnerability and how I struggle with that. That's a real life struggle. I'm not going to say I hate, I dislike, where people make it seem like vulnerability for a woman should come easy. And it's not a struggle. Like, we don't struggle with that. That's a man's struggle. That's not a woman's struggle. I beg to differ. Why do I beg to differ? Because you know how we got this thing of a alpha female, a more masculine female, right? She suffers from vulnerability. Most alpha females had a real struggle, and they were raised in that way. They were raised so independent to where they only depend on themselves and not even depend on God. They was raised in a way that they had to be strong, that them overcoming obstacles, situations, challenges, circumstances became their identity. It became who they were. So when they say, for my culture, a strong black woman, that became our identity. It became who we were, because the world and society displaced our homes. So now roles are different. Now more women are stepping up and leading the home, when it actually is the man who's supposed to lead. That's the way that God made it. He is the head. Doesn't discount the woman being the head, but the man, that's the leader of the home, to lead that family down the way and down the path that God leads him. And all that shifted, and roles shifted and changed. And so that's how I grew up. I grew up, your vulnerability, you don't have none. Crying is a weakness. It is a sign of weakness, not strength. Crying is a sign of weakness. So you don't cry publicly. You don't let nobody see you cry. You don't let no tears run down your face. You don't even let your kids see you cry. Not understanding that as a parent, if you don't allow for your children to see you vulnerable, I don't mean they shouldn't see you just bawled out on the floor, spat out crying. I'm just talking about, it's just a simple vulnerability. If you don't allow for your children to see vulnerability, whether you got daughters, sons, or both, they're going to grow up thinking this is the way. And they're going to have a hard time with being vulnerable, especially in relationships. And so what God told me was, your submission and surrenderance and your femininity is attached to your vulnerability. It's attached to your vulnerability because I created you with emotions. I created you to be a compassionate and concerning and wise and understanding being. I created for you to birth out legacy, to birth out vision. I created for you to be soft-hearted, not hard-hearted. And we don't understand and realize that when we are so hearted on that vulnerability, we don't let nobody get close to us. I can honestly say that because I gave my vulnerability, and most y'all women can relate, I gave my vulnerability away to the wrong man. Not to the wrong boy. My vulnerability didn't come when I first lost my virginity. But God made me realize that this is why intimacy is so key. This is why this thing is sacred between husband and wife. And the reason why it's sacred is because it is a place of vulnerability. It's a place where you go and all your flaws are shown. All your scars, your bruises, your wounds are shown in that place. And most of us women, you can say, and I'm going to say this, a lot of women, before I go to that part, a lot of women say, I've never had an orgasm. Most of those women are women who suffer from vulnerability. They have a hard time submitting and surrendering, and they struggle with that because your mindset it's a control thing. Some struggle with vulnerability because you were hurt before. That's my story. That I was hurt to my core, and I didn't understand it. And God had to break that thing down to me. Like, your vulnerability, the reason why you have a hard time being vulnerable and you keep people at a certain distance. You kept your ex-husband at an arm's distance. He kept you at an arm's distance. That's because the last person that you were intimate with and gave your heart to, and you were vulnerable, I mean full on vulnerable, that was the person that hurt you the most. That was the person that broke you down all the way to your core. And there was a switch that came on, and you either put a wall up and put a vow on that wall that I would never be like that to nobody else again. I know that's what I did. Said I would never care for nobody like that again. I would never put myself in that predicament again, not understanding the curse that I was speaking over myself. Not understanding, not just the curse that I was speaking over myself, but also understanding that I was putting up this wall that was going to allow for me to struggle with God in my relationship with God. That we was about to struggle. And the reason why we were about to struggle was the very thing. It's because I gave my vulnerability away to the wrong person. A person who didn't cherish it, didn't appreciate it, and was going to harm me in the worst way that I never, ever expected to happen. It is key and it is so vital that when you're going through your healing and you're going through that self-evaluation, that you really, really dig deep and you get to the root. And when you get to the root of that thing, don't run away from it. Don't hide from it. Don't shelter it. Don't pacify it. I deal with that later. Deal with it now. Because it's attached to your purpose. It is attached to your purpose. The very things that you're struggling and having a challenge with, it's attached to your purpose. What does this have to do with femininity? You can see how it and hear how it has to do with surrendering and submission. Well, the next thing me and God talked about and my vulnerability was, when the last time you've been feminine? Like, real talk. And feminine is just not how the way you dress, but it was part of how the way I dress. I was soft. I was kind-hearted. When the last time I dressed this way and I dressed that way and I really got up and really got myself together and fully dressed and took pride in the way that I looked, not to impress anybody else or to get anybody else's attention, but that was because that was for me. And that memory took me back to when I was 16 and I started wearing heels, and my mom started letting me wear heels. And I remember dressing up right after I was working at my job. I worked at McDonald's. That was my first job. Most people work their first job at fast food, whatever. Get over it. So I remember getting dressed up. We were going to a family outing, and I remember getting dressed up, and I had on these white cute pants that I had just got from the mall. Nice little pink shirt, show my shoulders. I don't even show my shoulders no more. And had my hair done, nails done and stuff, or whatever. Had on these cute high heels. Soon as I get to my family's house, I had 3 or 4 aunties. I was like, oh, who she thinks she is? Now, mind you, all day I was at work. I had on a McDonald non-slip shoes all day. All day. So I was like, yo. So I didn't say nothing. I kind of just brushed it off a little bit or whatever. Didn't say anything. But I noticed after that, it became a flood of people's opinions. How I dressed, how I walked, how I talked, how I was. And it wasn't until me and God got to this point where he said, that's where the enemy really started to pick you apart even more. Because that confidence that he tried to kill, it came back. That confidence he tried to kill in you, that boldness, that self-assurance he tried to kill in you at a younger age, by the time you hit 16, all that had resurfaced. And it didn't resurface because you was dating somebody. It didn't resurface because you had a boyfriend, it didn't resurface because of anybody. It started to get builded up, and you started to know who you were, and the enemy took you apart because there was no solid foundation in God. I had no spiritual foundation. So it was easy for the enemy to come and break it up. It was easy for him to come and break it up. And I said, wow, God. So this week in my devotion, I said, wow. So this is where we at. This is amazing. It's not crazy, but it's amazing because those are the root causes of why I no longer am vulnerable. He said, yeah, so now we're going to take this sledgehammer, this spiritual sledgehammer labeled let go, and we're going to knock down all of these walls one at a time and let it go. So in my journal time, I've been writing, I let go this, I let go of that. I lay all this at your feet, God. Surrendering, submitting. And the feminine part, that's coming back together. I'm learning how to balance that out because there is a balance between masculinity and femininity in both parties, male and female. So I'm learning that. My masculine side, yes, that's more my dominant side based upon the trials that I've been through in life. But my feminine side is starting to arise a little bit more. I'm becoming a little more softer, a little more gentler in my words. And I see it even when I speak to my sons and watching my language and my tone. So I said all to say, if you struggle with anything that I've mentioned today, make sure you go deeper. Make sure you find out what the root cause is. That's my encouragement. If you have made a vow of, I will never be this, I want you to know to break that off yourself. Pray that off of you because it hinders your relationship with God. You put limitations on how far God can use you We don't understand it when we do it because we're hurting. But after we do it, and then God brings it to us again, then we understand this is why this has been limited. This is why I've been limited, and I feel like why I can't get to the next spot, because you got walls blocking it, and you've put limitations upon what God really wants to do in your life. Release and let go. Be blessed and highly favored. Bye.